Chapter 6, Planning. So I came across this really good quote on planning. He who fails to plan is planning to fail. So why should we plan? The biggest question you're trying to solve is, what do I have to do today? What do I have to do today to solve or avoid the problems of tomorrow, right? And if we don't plan, then we fail because there are two big forces at play. The number one force that's at play outside of us is technology changes. Into the 2000s, Nokia dominated in a pretty big way. And then with Apple and touchscreen phones, the app ecosystem came in, the technology changed in a pretty big way. And many apps automated a lot of things in the new cell phones that needed many big supercomputers. So technology changes are big changes that's impacting pretty much every industry. So what's up for the next 10 years is something that you and your leadership team should be looking at. That's a big force outside your control. Technology advancement, technology changes. Back in the day, email wasn't there. Now it's instant messaging, right? So technology changes and developments an important area that makes every leader think about what's the plan for the future look like. Even customer expectations change, right? Back in the day, it was barter system. Then gold came in, and then paper money, and a lot of economies still use paper money. But then plastic cards, electronic money, and then eventually maybe cryptocurrency, right? So customer expectation and the kind of facilities that they get and what they expect is changing. So customer expectation and technology expectations are changing at rapid paces. So knowing these two forces will help you understand, what do I need to do today to adapt to these technology advancements and these customer preferences and customer expectation changes. But if I don't do it, then the value that I provide, the business that I'm in, just gets obsolete over time. So there are 3 steps to planning. As every chapter we've seen, there are simple steps for execution, for decision making, and similarly for planning. So the first step is to forecast what the future looks like. What is the future demand in technology changes, customer preference changes? That's your future need. And then evaluate where you are today. Evaluate where you are today. That's the second step. Once you know what the future looks like and what the present looks like, that's the second step. The third step is to figure out, how do you reconcile between the present and the future, right? And that would require you to make decisions, which we covered in the previous video. And you'd have to take certain actions. And you would want to make sure that those decisions and those actions are performed in the most efficient way, in the fastest way possible, in the cheapest way possible. So that can be done through OKRs. And this book calls it management by objectives. OKRs are objectives and key results, right? So let's get into it. So basically, when a planning session takes place, is a set of meetings where you decide, where you forecast the future, you look at the present, reconcile, and make certain decisions. That's where decisions are made. At the planning meeting, that's where decisions ideally should be made. That's the output of a planning meeting, where a certain strategy is formed, saying we want to increase our market share in, let's say, India, or we want to offer a product that is 10 times cheaper than what we have today. So that's a strategy. Maybe that's informed by some of the competitive landscape. Maybe that's informed by technology changes. So those strategies where we want to plan and adopt for are the decisions that are being made, saying, hey, this is the summary of what we want to do, right? And then the second thing that comes out of planning is a set of actions, right? Which is part of planning with key actions that need to be, but it's also part of execution in a pretty big way. So a set of decisions, or the summary or the strategy, is mainly the output of planning, but also maybe some key actions on a high level, which have key measurable results, are something that could be part of the planning process as well. So when we think about strategy, it's basically a plan, basically a set of objectives that we want to meet, and execution is set of tactics or set of things that you would do that you can measure. And when you execute, you will have a lot of problems. You will have existing projects that will be competing for resources for this new plan that you came up with. So you'll have to make prioritization decisions You will have to make sure that there's leverage built across the team so that not everyone's repeating and doing the same things over and over. You'll have to automate. Some things are just taking way too long for manual steps. Maybe automation helps you there. You will have to leverage your partners better because maybe they could help you with some of those tasks. Maybe you would want to distribute work more evenly. Maybe there is disproportionate balance between team members as to certain teams are working way too hard and that's why they cannot take on more work. So set of strategies to get into action requires a lot of execution steps, which requires prioritization in a pretty big way, automation, partners help, and distribution of work. What work doesn't get done is also an important area. If you keep taking on more and more things, keep planning and taking on more and more things, you'll probably not be able to do all of them because there's finite set of resources. You'll also have to cut things from your list of things that are executed. So you can focus on the most important area that's part of your strategy. So let's take an example. We've talked a lot about like what's the strategy and what's the tactic and key results. So let's take an example. Let's say I want my company to acquire 100 customers a month. And today, let's say they only do 2 customers a month, right? So then there's a sales set of goals. But once those acquisitions are happening, you want to also change that to onboarding. You want to make sure that you can actually onboard. You have this technology set up, the process set up to actually onboard those 100 customers. So a strategy that says, hey, we want to be able to acquire 100 new customers a month, which is greatly accelerating from where we are today. There could be a few tactics. We want to onboard. We want to have an onboarding experience that's self-service and not manual. We want contractors to help scale customization per customer so that it's done in parallel and not use engineers in the team or something like that, right? So basically, scaling could be an objective, and there could be a number that's measurable. So a key result is something that's measurable. Saying, hey, 100 customers a month, and let's have a plan to get to from 1 to 100. So there could be metrics that you could use like mean time to onboarding new customers, how many new customers are being added, how many customizations are being added in parallel, and how many customers are actually onboarded. Again, like we discussed before, for each of these objectives, you would want to have some way to have a straight line progress, have some way to measure the key results. So it could this could be 0 or 1 or 2 customers, and this could be 100. And you would want to plan it out saying, hey, in this 5 months, we would like to get from here to here. What does the straight line progress look like? And we will actually measure those key metrics over time to see if folks are working at the pace that we expect them to work, right? And there could be a disconnect. You would find out that maybe the work is way too high than what you expected. Then you would have to course correct and adapt. Maybe there's a lack of motivation. In that case, you can actually measure if progress is being made. This chart of actually showing what progress should be made versus what's actually being made is a big indication of pace, but also could help motivate engineers and employees in your team to actually deliver based on the expectation that you have. They could also come back to you and say, hey, this is way too much, and then you should probably be using your judgment and common sense, because you cannot just automate this saying, hey, this is how it should be, this is where it should be, and if you're failing, you're not meeting your expectations, and vice versa. That's where senior leaders need to have the right judgment to make a call saying, hey, is this work actually below plan because of lack of motivation or lack of pace, or it's just that actually that's that hard and there are new issues that came in which requires us to reset our targets, right? So if you don't have a clear target, you want to get 100 customers and that's where you are every week. If you don't measure it every month or so, then you will not really know if you're making progress. So again, this goes a little bit deep into execution, but planning again comes down to this simple question that we started this video on, which is, what do I have to do today to avoid tomorrow's problem or to solve for tomorrow's problems, right? And it starts with where you are today, deep understanding of where you are today, and then a clear understanding of where you want to go to. And then the third step is to bridge the gap with certain decisions and a strategy and a certain actions and key results that you can measure over time to get from where you are today to where you want to go tomorrow. All right. So again, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. So make sure you plan, but also don't keep planning and not reducing things, but don't keep planning when it's not ready and you're just keeping on planning and no actual work is done. So how often do you do planning is an art. I've seen 3 to 6 months of plan is probably a good one. I lean more towards a 6-month plan so that you can actually get things going. But that's an area for us to also go deep in some of the future videos. All right, good luck planning.